Testing, testing, one, two, three.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start the meeting in 2 minutes, so if everyone would get prepared. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen and members of ARAC. Welcome to the ARAC meeting of November the 7th. We'll begin by confirming the minutes of the meeting of September the 5th and October 21st. Carried? Okay, I'll just read my required statement. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 3 and 6 on today's agenda. For the items listed above, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Municipal Board. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Municipal Board if Council does not adopt an amendment within 120 days of receipt of the application for zoning and 180 days for an official plan amendment. A comment sheet is available at the door for anyone wishing to submit written comments on these amendments. So with that, we will go through the agenda. We have item number 1, the draft operating capital budget for the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. We'll hold that because we have presentation and discussion. Item number 2, status update, Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee inquiries and motions for the period ending 31st of October 2013. Is that received? Item number 3 is zoning, 100 Alicia Crescent, West Carleton. There are no speakers on this, and I'll just read the motion that Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008-250 to change the zoning of 100 Alicia Crescent from rural residential subzone 3 to rural residential subzone 3 with exception to permit a garden suite for a 20-year period as shown in document 1 and detailed in document 2. Is that carried? Item number 4, Ontario Municipal Board Appeal Subdivision and Zoning 6335 and 6350 Perth Street. We have speakers on that, so we'll hold that item. Item number 5, a review of the Rural Affairs Office Grant Program. That the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend Council approve adjustments to the Rural Community Building Grant Program or Rural Association Partnership Program as outlined in this report, and elimination of the building permit grant for farmers. On that, is that carried? Item number 6, comprehensive zoning bylaw 2008-250, anomalies and minor corrections, third report 2013. That the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommends that Council approve the amendments recommended in column 3 of documents 2 and 3 to correct anomalies in zoning bylaw 2008-250. Is that carried? We do have an item 7 under new business, and we will come back to that. We have to move a waiver to have that on the agenda, so we'll discuss that when we finish the other items that were held. So with that, we'll go back to item 1, the 2014 Draft Operating Capital Budget, Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, and I'll turn it over to the esteemed Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are here today. One of the items is to consider the 2014 operating budget and capital budget, tax-supported for the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. Just as a quick agenda, we'll be going through a quick presentation. We'll be allowing room for public delegations, followed by any questions you may have of staff. We do have staff from Infrastructure Services, and I believe Public Works is here as well. Should you have questions of those departments, you will have a chance to present any motions to amend the budget as you see fit as well, and then ultimately the goal is to get a recommendation of the budget to take forward to Council. The budget, from an operating perspective that we're looking at today, is the Development Review Rural and the Rural Affairs Office. It's important to note, I think, that the portions of the branch that reports to me that is not that is not specific to rural, the development inspections as well as the bylaw permits and inspections groups, are being approved by Council. So these initiatives that are, I guess the operating budget that's before you today is strictly for rural and Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, as you all well know, but people in the audience may not be familiar with, is unique in the city in that it's the only standing committee that is based on geography as opposed to subject matter. So there are rural portions of the overall city budget that are being addressed by and services that are being addressed by other committees. However, these are the areas that are only specific to rural. The budget that we're presenting to you today is actually presenting a slight decrease for this committee's budget over last year. You'll notice that the overall budget is $3.285 million, and that's strictly on the operating side. The reduction that's there is based on an adjustment to reduced employee benefit costs for MPE and CIPP bargaining unit, as well as some adjustments to staffing level and reflecting seniority of some of our new hires. We're also presenting to you capital items coming through Transportation Services that, for your approval, that are in the $5.473 million. And the basis of that capital funding is coming primarily through tax debt, about 2/3 to 1/3 coming from reserves. Some of the capital highlights and the breakdown of that: the Rural Structures Program, which is larger culverts, sometimes called bridges or overpasses, but for most of the people in the rural community, they look at them as box culverts or larger, more significant culverts, is the bulk of that at $3.9 million. We're looking at $100,000 in guide rail upgrades. We've got rural road upgrades, so this is taking gravel roads and increasing the standard. They may still be a gravel road, but they would be at a higher standard than currently, $1.1 million. And we're looking at some funding as well for the construction of Country Club Road, which is now known as Golf Club Way. Rural, as a highlight, I guess, and I think this is relevant and important, certainly for rural residents. Transportation Committee is dealing with a number of rural road resurfacing projects, and this is actually a very significant number compared to other years, at $16.4 million being spent on rural road resurfacing, so that's repaving. We're looking at $2.8 million in rural parks being constructed this year associated with development, and we are looking at $1.4 million for various street lighting, network modifications, and signals programs. In addition to that, there's also portions of the Carp Road, Albion Road, and Ottawa Road 174 that are in the rural area, and the associated numbers for those projects are beside them at $2.9 million, $2.2 million, and $1.7 million accordingly. I won't go through the long list, but unless you want me to, but for the sake of providing some clarity as to where those projects are, this list provides the projects that are the bridge projects or the structures projects that are happening in 2014 or being funded in 2014 throughout the rural area. From a rural road upgrade perspective, we're looking at upgrading Golden Line from Hamilton Side Road to Old Almont Road, Stonecrest Road from Kilkenny Drive to 350 meters south of Kinburn Side Road, as well as Pierce Road from Deer Run Place to Malakoff. Currently below the line, so if there is funding available, either through savings through existing capital programs or other sources of funding, is Spruce Ridge Road from Richardson Side Road to Speedway Road, or Belay Road 390 meters east of Bank to Hawthorne. The rural road resurfacing projects, a fairly long list, and that's, I guess, the list that's before you. That funding project is being funded by Transportation Committee. So if there's any projects if there's any questions, we can address those. And falling below the line is Dunning Road. Rural parks that are in the budget this year: Green Meadows Park within the Rivington subdivision and Carp, Greeley Village Center Park, and the Tate subdivision linear park in Ward 19. And those projects are being funded through Planning Committee as they're part of the overall parks development envelope. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. I had a couple questions, but I don't know if there are other members of the committee. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question on, I just noticed in the project list, you do have the Richmond Bridge, which is McBean, listed, but when I go into the breakdown over the next 4 years, it's primarily funded in 2017. So it's $3.3 million in 2017 and $154,000 next year. So what exactly is happening in 2014 for that bridge?
Mr. Chair, I'll turn that over to Infrastructure Services to provide the details.
So in the budget book, it's the forecast is page 24. The project appears on page 18, though.
Chair, that's where we'd be identifying, start doing the design work on the bridge, and the actual renewal works would be planned for 2017.
Okay, so in 2011 you did your condition assessment and structural evaluation, and then so next year you'll do a comprehensive design.
Yeah, we'll start on the design work, some of the approval.
Right, and then but you're not
plan, and then plan the actual construction of it in 2017.
Okay. Right.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other question? I have, Mr. Moody, could you put page 3 back up on your presentation? No. It's where you outline the different roads, Parkway, the allocation of Parkway, or Albion Road. Yes. I'd just like to get clarification on Albion Road, the rural portion. Are you in a position to outline exactly what you're doing with Albion Road? Are the shoulders being paved? Is the road being widened to as much as possible?
So, Chair, in terms of scope of work, it does include the resurfacing. In terms of the paved shoulders, that's linked to the cycling plan. So we're still working with the planning and growth in terms of the outcome of the cycling plan recommendations to integrate that with the plan works on Albion Road. In terms of widening, there's no lane widenings being planned, but certainly we are looking at improving the width of the existing platform along that road.
So when will you know, because this is a very important north-south road for the rural areas, and there are a lot of people that use it, hard to believe, for cycling, but when will you know if you are going to be paving the shoulders? Like, I just need no time frame because it's a big concern to Greeley Community Association and a lot of people in Osgood Ward.
Sure, Chair. It's, the cycling plan is being approved as part of the Transportation Master Plan later this month. So once the cycling plan is approved, it will identify basically Albion's road status as a cycling route, and based on the recommendations from that, that will be incorporated into the works plan for 2014. So we'll be able to confirm once that plan is approved the works that are being planned for Albion Road. Okay,
thanks very much for that answer. And I think those are all my questions. Councillor Kadri.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And just on the same slide that Councillor Thompson was speaking about, on the Carp Road resurfacing, you're obviously talking north of the Queensway or north of 417? It should be that. Sure. The reason why I'm asking the question is everybody's aware that the south of 417 Carp Road is going through an EEA process for its widening. So I'm just wondering, will the two projects be tied together, or will the north portion of 417 Carp Road north of 417 be done first? Because I know it's a resurfacing project only.
Typically, if there's opportunities for coordination, I can't tell you right now the exact timing of either or, but they are two different scopes of work. So we wouldn't, as an example, be delaying the resurfacing with the ultimate widening. But if there are opportunities for coordination between the two projects, we certainly would look at that very hard.
Thank you for that, Mr. Newell. And the reason I'm asking is, you don't want to disrupt the traffic on that road twice, within 2 years of each other or a year of each other. So if you can tie it together, that would work well for the community as well as for the people using it.
Yeah, certainly we'll take a good look at it to make sure that we minimize the overall disruption to the community.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kadri. Seeing no other, Councillor Deputy Mayor Al Shantiri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to staff for the presentation. But Mr. Moody, when you said our budget will be decreased by 2.4 million, can you elaborate a little bit more? Like I checked the list here, where it's going, but it doesn't seem it has a lot of detail.
Sure. So Mr. Chair, just to be clear, it's 2.4% reduction, reduction of $80,000, and the rationale for that is based on our benefits costs for our employees, and the portions of operating funding which are in front of you are both for the Rural Affairs Office as well as the development review within the rural area. So our planners and engineers that conduct development review projects or review development projects, those staff members, the benefits costs for them have actually decreased because they're either MPE or CIPP. So we've actually seen a reduction in those costs. We've also hired and through normal staff turnover, we've had some senior staff leave, being replaced by more junior staff, which are at a lower pay grade, and that's been one of the contributing factors to that as well.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, if we can ask Mr. Newell and Mr. Gonche, since we don't see them often in this committee, but one of the questions we'd like to see, when would we receive as a council a full update? 2 years ago, we borrowed $200 million, and then the city contributed $135 to add for roads in general, bridges and ditches. And so where we get the list, what's been done and what's need to continue to be done?
Mr. Chair, I believe you're referring to Ottawa on the Move.
Correct.
Yes, approximately about a year ago, in advance of last budget cycle, we did bring a report forward with the status of the program, and we're now into year 3 of that program. It was original $340 million funding for it. but allowed us to advance projects into 2014 with an overall envelope in the range of $500 million. So there hasn't been determined a formal bring back to committee. We certainly can do that. We can bring a report to ARAC with an update in the overall program, or we could do it by way of memo to mayor, members of council as an overall update.
Well, I think it would be helpful to all of us to receive that update, because we received the first year, but we haven't received the final, if it's possible, just to see how Ottawa on the Move help us to advance some of this work. Otherwise, we'll have to wait longer, basically.
Certainly, we can do that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Al Santiri. So with seeing no other questions, we have a technical amendment moved by Vice Chair Blais regarding the 2014 draft operating capital budget. Whereas in developing the estimates for the Rural Structures Capital Program, the additional requirement requested for Project 906598 Carlsbad Lane Bridge, Bearbrook Creek, page 13, was $700,000, and whereas this requirement will be funded by transferring funds from existing capital works already approved by council in previous budgets, and whereas $522,000 in additional authority was inadvertently omitted from the submission and is required in order to fund the Class A detailed design cost estimate, and whereas this additional requirement will be funded from the Citywide Capital Reserve Fund, therefore be resolved that the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee approve the amended pages 10, 11, 12, and 13 of the capital budget, and be it further resolved that these replace the existing pages to be presented to Council on the 27th of November 2013. Is that technical amendment carried? Okay, thank you. And moved by Vice Chair Blais that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend that Council, sitting as Committee of the Whole, approve the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee 2014 draft operating budget and capital budget as follows. Development Review Process Rural Operating Resource Requirements, page 5, and item number 2, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee capital program, amended page 11, individual projects listed on pages 12 to 22, including the amended project 906598 Carlsbad Lane Bridge, Bearbrook, as amended on page 13, be carried. Is that carried? Okay, so we have approved the budget as listed in item 1. Okay. We'll move ahead to item number 4, Ontario Municipal Board Appeals Subdivision and Zoning 6335 and 635 Perth Street. There will be a staff presentation. So we welcome Mr. Moody back, and you're joined by the esteemed Cheryl McWilliams.
Good morning. This report is before you today to obtain direction for staff in advance of an Ontario Municipal Board hearing that's scheduled for November 26th. The appeals have been filed by the applicant on the city's lack of decision for the subdivision and zoning for development applications on Perth Street in the Village of Richmond. We feel we are not yet in a position to prepare draft plan approval conditions and cannot recommend draft approval for the subdivision. As a result, we are recommending committee refuse the subdivision at this time. For the zoning bylaw, it relates directly to the subdivision, and we typically do not consider their approval until after subdivision draft approval. And as a result of that, we are asking that committee recommend council refuse the zoning bylaw at this time. The final point in the recommendation is that committee and council give staff direction to oppose the zoning bylaw and subdivision applications at this time to the Ontario Municipal Board. Here you have the community design plan for the Village of Richmond. The subject lands are on the west side of the village, outlined in turquoise that you can't quite see, but they run on either side of Perth Street and consist of lands within the Western Development lands. So this is the existing village, Perth Street, McBean, and Shea. Sorry, I'm using my right hand for the mouse. This is just the air photo of the village from 2011, and again, it just outlines the lands that are subject to the applications for the plan of subdivision and the zoning bylaw amendment immediately west of the existing village. This is the demonstration plan for the Western Development lands. And again, the subject lands are on either side of Perth Street, to the north and the south of Perth Street. The yellow shows the proposed layout for single-family homes. The green shows the proposed park locations, the stormwater management pond proposed, and open space, along with the north-south collector road, which would serve the majority of the traffic, feeding the majority of the traffic in and out of the proposed development. As well, you can see that Van Gogh Drain is located in this area at the moment, and it shows open space buffering adjacent to it. The orange and reds colors are predominantly higher density forms of residential development, being multiples and other forms of multiple other than the street towns as well. This is really poor quality. This is the layout of the draft plan of subdivision. Again, Perth Street runs through the middle. The collector runs north and south through the lands. The park block is proposed to be located here. The storm pond and the open space associated with it. There's an unused hydro corridor running through here. The existing Van Gogh drain runs here, and it's proposed to be realigned to the eastern property line. The wells proposed to service the site would be communal wells, ultimately owned and operated by the City of Ottawa, and they are located just to the south of the existing subdivision application. The layout of the subdivision is generally consistent with the demonstration plan from the community design plan for the Western Development lands. It does show the park and the stormwater management, and the general layout of the roads is consistent with the community design plan. The proposed plan of subdivision shows the residential blocks as blocks and not individual lots, so we don't know the details of the lotting. And we'll go to the next. The issues outstanding from our perspective remain outstanding, and they are, in summary, the stormwater management and environmental assessment relating to stormwater management, the drainage outlet for the subdivision and the Arbuckle and Van Gogh drain specifically, the interim floodplain financial plan dealing with the servicing of the Western Development lands, in particular, some of the details relating to the water servicing, and then the layout of the subdivision. We feel that these items need to be addressed at least at a conceptual level prior to proceeding to draft approval. In July 2010, the Community Design Plan for the Village of Richmond was approved by Committee and Council with a number of directions provided to staff. This particular one deals with the environmental assessment relating to stormwater management, and that the stormwater solution has to be provided to address everything from the drainage of the individual foundations of homes through to the stormwater management pond. We feel that this is one of the more substantive issues outstanding to be addressed prior to draft approval. The community, the stormwater solution noted is essentially at a master servicing level. We need to know what the comprehensive solution is for the Western Development lands before we can craft draft conditions that will allow us to move forward to the registration and the development of the subdivision. As part of the stormwater management solution, we need to be sure that the site can be developed and drained without impacting the upstream and downstream property owners, any existing and future residents, including the future homeowners within the development. Towards reaching the stormwater solution, there is a level of detail that has been required as a result of some of the site constraints. Those site constraints include soils, some sensitive marine clay soils, some groundwater levels that may be higher than what may be anticipated in other areas, as well as some issues relating to the receiving water courses and their capacity to accommodate. The city does not contemplate basements that are below a normal groundwater level, and that's essentially our starting point when we're looking at addressing this council direction. The elevation of groundwater level from staff's perspective has not yet been agreed to. We did receive additional information this week, and we have not had a chance to complete our review of that. From that point of establishing where the basements will be, we'll be able to look towards addressing the outstanding issues with respect to the stormwater collection and the stormwater management pond, as well as addressing issues with the receiving water courses. The environmental assessment has been directed by council. It's not necessarily a Ministry of the Environment requirement for this development to proceed forward, but it is a direction that's been given to staff. We see that we need to have that solution brought back to the public, to the community, that the city needs to accept it, and then we need to have that posted as being a completed process. With respect to the drainage outlets, there's the existing Van Gaal drain that runs as far south as Perth Street. It's proposed to be relocated to the eastern lot line, towards the eastern lot line. That process under the Municipal Drainage, or under the Drainage Act, is underway. The other issue relating to the receiving water course is what is known as, relates to what is known as the Arbuckle drain, which extends from the Van Gaal drain down to the Jock River. There's also the Moore branch of that drain. Both of those have been subject to a petition drain that is, I guess, still an open file with the city. We are aware that there's existing concerns with the Arbuckle drain and erosion on private property, and it's an existing situation. We do have some concerns that that situation may be made worse with this development and need confirmation that can be addressed. As part of that, that would also ensure that we would also be looking to ensure that we have legal and sufficient outlet for the Van Gaal drain, as well as the receiving waters from this development into the Arbuckle drain, so that we're not impacting private property owners. This is from the Village of Richmond secondary plan. Again, these are the subject lands north and south of Perth Street. The the Van Gaal drain is here, the open space relating to the storm pond. The yellow is residential uses, and the green are parks and the open space buffer lands. The blue lines, lined or shaded areas, are regulatory floodplain or permanent floodplain. The orange north of, or the red north of Purr Street is an interim floodplain, and the secondary plan identifies that there is a possibility of removing that interim floodplain, and from input from the Conservation Authority, they've indicated that they are not yet in a position to formally allow that floodplain to be removed and to allow the development to proceed forward. The provincial policy statement and the official plan do not contemplate development in the floodplain, so that's one of the issues in proceeding forward to draft approval that we have not had addressed yet. We need the Conservation Authority to be in a position to support the development and to have the floodplain removed. The official plan does define development as lot creation. Some of the other items relating to the issues for outstanding for draft approval are the water servicing. As I had indicated before, the proposed or the existing wells that will be the municipal wells servicing the development are located outside of this plan of subdivision on an adjacent property, and that property is subject to a draft plan application of subdivision on which the wells are actually shown within a right-of-way, and we're not convinced yet that the block size is appropriately located and dimensioned to be appropriate to allow us both access and to allow for the full range of equipment and servicing needs for developing the well system on that block. This is an ongoing issue that we can resolve, I believe. The other issue relates to subdivision layout, and this community design plan does call for a larger style of lots, and neither the zoning requested or the draft plan of subdivision identifies where these parcels can be. We're looking to make sure that there's buffering or an easing into the lot sizes that are being contemplated in this application, which are at a higher density than the existing village. The other points relating to the subdivision layout are with respect to the ability to plant trees on the streets within the road allowances. The CDP does call for street trees because of the sensitive marine clay soils, the setbacks being proposed in the zoning application. It would appear at this point that there is not room to accommodate street trees on most of the streets off of the main north-south collector. The CDP does allow for a 16.5-meter right-of-way if it can be demonstrated that such things as the trees, utilities, snow storage can be made available. From recent experience in the Fernbank community with a similar 16.5-meter right-of-way with sidewalks, utilities, and singles that are on wider lots than contemplated here with deeper setbacks than what are proposed here. There was one side of the street where there was no street trees possible once the final design of the subdivision came in. And it's for situations like this that we have some concerns with the ability to move forward with the layout as it is with the right-of-way widths and still be able to accommodate street trees. So just in summary, the Planning Act establishes criteria for considering draft approval, which includes matters such as flood control, demonstrating shapes of lots, the suitability of the land for the development, and that the development is in the public interest. Once draft approval is in place, it also allows offers of sale to occur on the lots as laid out on the draft plan. The draft approval also must be consistent with the provincial policy statement and the official plan. Once we have draft approval of a subdivision, it essentially implies that there is a commitment for this land to proceed as drafted on the draft plan, and that the conditions that have been imposed can reasonably be addressed, and that we can continue, and we don't feel that we are at that point yet. And we are, although we are continuing to work with the applicant towards draft approval, we would ask the committee at this point to recommend the subdivision be refused, that council refuse the zoning bylaw, and that we get direction to proceed to oppose the applications before the Ontario Municipal Board. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, in addition to some of the technical details that Cheryl's put forward, there have been, I guess, a number of points of potential confusion that have come up in recent days, both from some members of the public and members of committee and council. And I would like to just quickly address a couple of those, and we're always open to questions from members of the committee. There are some people that may think that what's before you today is a question of whether this land should be developed. And Mr. Chair, that question was answered back in 2010 when the CDP was approved. That's not a decision that's before you today. There's questions, some people that may think that the development or the reason we're here before you today is to talk about a reduction in numbers or density, and that's not what's before you today. The discussion really isn't about numbers or densities today. The discussion today is really about, has the developer met all of the requirements required to take that next step? And Mr. Chair, I think staff's position that's before you is that our opinion is they haven't, in keeping with the direction that was provided to us by council back in 2010, that there's still some hurdles to get over. We continue to work with the developer to get over those hurdles. We will continue to work with the developer to get over those hurdles in a means that is consistent with the CDP and consistent with the direction provided to us by council, leading up to and beyond the upcoming pre-hearing date at the Ontario Municipal Board. And I guess while there are a number of issues still outstanding, there has been progress made on those issues in recent times, and we expect continued progress to be made on those going forward.
Thank you for that, Mr. Moody, and we appreciate the comprehensive report that Ms. McWilliams has just presented to us. I think we all understand that Richmond is one of the three major villages in the rural areas, and we appreciate her work and your work and that of Councillor Moffat in trying to deal with this important issue. We have 6 speakers, so I think that we will move to, unless there are specific questions, I'd prefer that we go to the speakers and then take questions or comments from members. So we have Mr. Webster first to the docket, followed by Mr. Peter Moore. Welcome, Bruce, and you know the rules. 5 minutes, and I'll remind you when you have 1 minute left.
The microphone system. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I want to make it very clear that I'm speaking as a private individual, not a representative of the Village Association, but also as a former member of the Community Design Plan Committee. So I was present at most, if not all, of the meetings that formulated the Community Design Plan, Secondary Plan, now incorporated as OPA 87 in the city. It's my opinion that the situation now under consideration by this committee of ERAC has been brought about by unnecessary intervention in the CDB process in July of 2010, which process is noted in the minutes of July 8, 2010, as being unfinished. There's no question that the outstanding issues that are before you, which staff has very, very clearly and very well pointed out, are as a result of that CDP being adopted as a finished document with the noted exceptions in the minutes. The forced foreclosure of the CDP process was brought about by then Councillor for Rio Goulburn because, and here I quote, although it's not minuted, but it was said to me directly by the then councillor that the CDP process had to be finished because, quote, Mattaby wants it done, end quote. The gentleman who's in the corporation who's before you with this potential OMB hearing at the time was one of the principals from Mattaby, working on the CDP process along with another lady who no longer works for Mattaby as well. Both of them have moved on. But the appellant who's asking you to approve this zoning application was the architect and is the architect of their own position at the present time. Therefore, I encourage this committee to refuse, as staff is recommending, the zoning application and all other applications before you by the developer. Had the Servicing Committee in March, April, May of 2010 been allowed to finish its task given, we probably would have had the opportunity to incorporate present city strictures and considerations for stormwater management, for servicing, for infrastructure extension, for financial implications as well. These processes were in fact being discussed, and the servicing was being discussed by a committee which I chaired, the Servicing Subcommittee. We were not allowed to finish our task because, quote again, Mattaby wants it done. What the appellant is asking for here, or in their zoning application here, they're asking you to violate provincial policy statement. They're asking you to violate, or at least close an eye, to normal city building codes, footing elevations, stormwater management. Not saying this jokingly, but the stormwater management plan that I've been privy to view looks as if there's going to be an attempt to make water run uphill. That just doesn't work yet. Perhaps at Magnetic Hill, but not in Ottawa. I'm therefore fully supportive of the staff recommendation that this committee and then full council reject the applications by the appellant. And in closing, mention that of interest and note are the last pages of staff recommendations, the 10 or 12 points. There are very few of those points that should be excluded from your consideration, but I would bring to your attention particular points 6, 7, 12, 19, 21, 23, and 24. That's probably half of the points that the public raised of concern, and staff has, to the most part, addressed them. They've indicated that they have the same concerns that the residents of the Village of Richmond and those members of the CDP committee who had no financial interest in this development. In other words, those who were serving on the committee as pure citizens expressed those concerns. So my thanks to the committee and my extreme thanks to staff for presenting a document, a recommendation which fully supports the Village of Richmond and is supported by myself and those who I speak with. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that, Bruce. And I was trying to jot down the points you'd enumerated, and I neglected to tell you you had 1 minute left, but you came in under 5 minutes, so good to go. Thanks very much. Any questions?
I've been here once before.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, Peter Moore, followed by John Shearer of the Richmond Village Association. You have 5 minutes, and I will warn you when you have 1 minute left. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of ARAC, my name is Peter Moore. I'm a Richmond resident, and our home is directly adjacent to these Western Development lands. I'm also one of the former landowners whose property has been purchased by one of the proponents for this development, and I oppose the city's current recommendation on this matter. My opposition to this matter is based on the inconsistencies of this recommendation with Council's July 2010 decision with conditions to approve the CDP. I personally attended many of the CDP meetings, and my wife served as the official secretary for the CDP. Of course, many of the CDP participants had conflicting opinions and viewpoints, which is natural, but everybody had the opportunity to participate. The CDP was open, transparent, well-publicized, well-attended, and well-documented. Excuse me. The city presented the CDP to us as an open, consultative, structured process with the assurance that the results would be acted upon. It was your commitment that persuaded myself and my fellow citizens to spend countless hours in our libraries, schools, and arena debating the merits of various development schemes, hydrogeologic reports, park studies, traffic, and other aspects. I have no idea how much money was spent, but it was certainly in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this does not include thousands of volunteer hours devoted to this activity. With respect to the matter before you today, and contrary to Council's decision in July 2010, the city is now amending or imposing new restrictions on the original conditions. And I refer you to item 10 as an example. The justification for these new conditions is dubious and unclear. For example, surely the city is not proposing to spend Mr. O'Connor's valuable time at an OMB hearing to argue the proposed setbacks don't provide enough room for trees. I would have hoped the city could resolve tree locations through discussion and not litigation. But I take particular issue with the city referring to uncertainties with the Arbuckle and Vangal drains as part of your reasoning. The city is solely responsible for any delays on this file, which date back to 2005. I know this since I'm one of the original petitioners. It would take far longer than my allotted time here today to walk you through the bizarre history of this application, but suffice to say the city bears full responsibility for the delays. I personally appeared before this committee years ago on this matter to withdraw my original petition, and I'm just as frustrated now as I was then. The Llewellyn drain is a direct and relevant precedent, and yet the city still refuses to negotiate in good faith to extricate the original petitioners from this mess. I cannot help but think the city's delay is related to the broader issue before you today. I also attended the February public meeting, which were referred to in document 4 and which Bruce just talked about. Frankly, the brief and half-hearted presentation by the city representatives at the start of this meeting was not informative or well received. As a result, I was disappointed, but not surprised to hear many of the same concerns on water and wastewater, which were addressed during the CDP, arise again. Perhaps these are understandable for my fellow citizens who did not participate in the CDP. However, it's inexcusable for the city representatives to be unprepared to respond to the questions. There were numerous comments and concerns expressed on the water supply for the new development, and these exact same issues were tabled, discussed, studied, discussed again, and resolved during the CDP process. I took the time to study the engineering reports on this topic, and the results are unanimous and unequivocal. There is more than ample water for this development from the Nepean Deep Aquifer. So my fellow residents' concerns could have been allayed if the city's representatives had prepared themselves to respond to these questions. It's unfortunate that after so much time, effort, and money has been invested to study the issue, some of the meeting's attendees also resorted to fear-mongering with respect to the safety of our existing shallow wells. There were also many comments on stormwater, which in my opinion is the most complex issue and deserving of scrutiny. The construction of berms, our annual spring freshet, the appearance of standing water in fields, all these serve to make this an issue.
You have 1 minute left.
Thank you. That concern residents. The capacity of the retention ponds to deal with flooding and the 100-year rain events is critical. And when we hear that 1,000+ homes are going to be discharging sump water into the Arbuckle drain, that sounds like a lot of water. However, by demonstrating using a simple graphic that this volume is actually a small percentage of the actual runoff, the issue could have been put in the proper context. The city could have been prepared to address these issues with a short summary of the important engineers' reports in layman's language. Finally, as I recall from both the CDP and house-to-house surveys taken by our former councillor, the large majority of residents want to see our community improve with more services and amenities. So if you polled everyone in Richmond, you would find a small group strongly for, a similar number strongly against, and the vast majority of residents would be basically neutral. The single biggest message that arose from the CDP was, with all due respect, we do not want to become another Barhaven or Canada with tract housing and featureless subdivisions. Hopefully the developers heard this loud and clear, and if the city ensures they design their developments accordingly, they will receive the support from residents.
Okay. Thanks very much. Are there any questions? I appreciate your comprehensive
Thank you.
Report that you gave us. Any? Okay, Councillor Moffat.
Peter, thanks for coming. I just wanted to clarify one thing. You mentioned you started speaking about the communal wells and water. That's not one of the issues here. That's not one of the outstanding issues. So you seem to have some choice words about people's opposition to that. But when you look at the rationale behind why staff are currently opposing this or in the position that they have to right now, none of those issues have to do with the communal well system or the water supply.
Yeah, I think my point, Councillor Moffat, was only that the city has made a commitment through the CDP process to move this file forward. And during the public meeting, this issue rose by many different residents, as I think Bruce referred to. But there was really no attempt by the city's representatives to basically diffuse the issue. So that generally leads to support or opposition to the development from residents. And so I was just disappointed that the city's own representatives didn't refer and talk to their previous colleagues like Don Morse, who led the CDP, who could have all this information available for residents, because that helps, generally to get the truth out and the facts out rather than inconsistencies or other, half-truths.
Right, but this isn't really a process of trying to sell the community on the development. This is a process of working with the developer to try to resolve some of the outstanding issues. Unfortunately, we have to develop a position to be able to argue something in front of the OMB. Hopefully, we don't have to go to the OMB. We can figure this stuff out in the coming weeks.
Sure.
But as of right now, we have no choice but to actually develop a position.
Well, I acknowledge your point. I'm just pointing out that I think generally the city's support for the development has been half-hearted.
Fair enough.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moffat, and thank you, Peter, for that. Next, John Shearer, Richmond Village Community Association, and then following John will be Mr. Alan Cohen. You have 5 minutes, and I'll warn you when you have 1 minute remaining. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I have 4 points I wish to underline for your consideration today. My first point is, as you are well aware, the Richmond Village Association actively participated in the development of Richmond's CDP. You're no doubt also aware that we are on record with our views that the existing CDP and secondary plan is incomplete and falls short of Richmond Village Association's and residents' expectations in a number of critical areas. Our most recent communication on that subject was contained in a letter to Councillor Moffat and to Minister Jeffrey, which I've filed with the committee. I'll just leave it at that and say that we recognize we have to live under the existing CDP, but we do look forward to a review of the CDP in 2015. The second point I wish to make is that we want to thank city staff for its report of October 24th to ARAC. First, for recognizing the deficiencies in the subdivision and zoning application, and second, for standing firm on the need to resolve each of the outstanding issues detailed therein. Members of ARAC need to be aware that the RVA Board of Directors fully supports the recommendation being made by staff to you today. My third point is really an elaboration on a number of the major areas of concern outlined in staff's report to you. Staff have pointed out that the resolution of financial implications, as cited in the July 10 motion, need to be resolved. Our comment from the RVA is that development of the Western Development Lands must be self-sustaining. The total cost for infrastructure improvement of all types necessary to support development should not come out of taxpayer funds in the urban core, nor from the pockets of current Richmond residents. Second point I'd like to elaborate on is the completion of the stormwater management works and related issues. City staff report there, I think, covers our concerns adequately, and I'll just leave the comment at that. Third area I'd like to elaborate on is subdivision layout. The proposal of a developer for exceptions and encroachments on already tight setbacks of lots will result in a development out of character with the village and contrary to provincial policy on rural versus urban design. No other plan that we are aware of for a rural village in Ottawa contemplates such a development. The proposal stands in stark contrast to the rural setting of Richmond, one of Ottawa area's oldest communities, celebrating its 200th anniversary in 2018. Taken together with another proposal that is being considered by Council for land south of Perth Street, we would be adding 5,000 plus new residents to the Western Development Lands, a community of roughly 4,700. That's a doubling of Richmond. and it will simply contribute to urban sprawl of the worst kind in what is a rural setting. The infrastructure to support large numbers of new residents exists in the urban core. It does not currently exist in Richmond. Still continuing on subdivision layout, Richmond is on flat, open, and often windy farmland. Trees are especially important in this environment, and sufficient space must be provided for them throughout the proposed subdivision. As well, park space, setbacks, rights-of-way, connecting footpaths, sidewalks, and bike paths should complete the existing village plan, complement the existing village plan, and provide a safe and secure, welcoming environment. Final area of elaboration: lack of existing facilities is of major concern to Richmond residents: parks, roads, schools, community centers, etc. Richmond's public facilities are currently at capacity or beyond, and one of the toughest questions we keep receiving at the association from residents is, given all the issues large development presents, what advantage will development bring to us? Other than some potential private business development, we really don't have a good answer to that question.
One minute remaining.
Thank you. My final point: the Richmond Association wants to be clear that we welcome development. We are not trying to stop development on the Western Development lands, but we only welcome development if it is sustainable, environmentally sound, brings identifiable benefits to the community, and is in keeping with the provincial policy statement on use of existing urban infrastructure while discouraging urban sprawl. Recent examples in Richmond of developments which respect those norms include the Colonnade development, Kings Grant, Richmond Gate, Richmond Oaks, and several others. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Any questions from anyone? Okay, thank you very much. The next speaker, Alan Cohen, and then Doug Kazda.
One second, Mr. Chairman, if you would, before you start timing me.
Welcome, Mr. Cohen, and I'm sure you're familiar with the time frame, and when you're ready to start, we'll start the timer.
I'm here with January Cohen, who's my associate. We filed the appeals on behalf of the applicants. It has often been suggested, sir, that I like going to the OMB. I don't. Because when I go to the OMB, I've already failed. What I do like is being in the OMB. Because instead of 5 minutes, I have 10 to 15 days to put on trial what I believe is appropriate. And over those 10 to 15 days, the truth has a way of coming out, the whole truth. This is what it takes to file for subdivision approval. As I heard Ms. McWilliams, it sounded as though my client had sent a letter saying, can we have subdivision approval? I want you to know what it means to take a report that you have and read it in the privacy of your office or home. If you are my client or my client's experts, the first thing that report is saying is that my clients and their experts are incompetent. That's clearly stated between the lines, and that is not true, and that will be demonstrated at the hearing. They've spent an enormous amount of time on this. All the necessary information is there. The second thing that is being said, and I hope you'll hear these words carefully, is that your CDP process is flawed, that there's no point having a CDP, that it stands for nothing. My clients bought that land depending on that process and on the finished product. And the third thing that report says is that staff, and I say this respectfully, either does not understand what draft plan approval means, or they've decided it should mean everything else. I will spend 10 days demonstrating what Ms. McWilliams said is not so. But here's the incredibly important point. Even if she were right on every point, my client would still satisfy the requirements for draft plan approval. because draft plan approval means approval that is draft with conditions. And those conditions are to fulfill the concerns that she has articulated. It is not to complete the process and register. And that's most regrettable. I'm going to ask this committee to do two things, which it can do, and still send this matter off to the board. And I can confirm that we will continue to work with your staff if they will continue to work with us. There is no reason whatsoever that the financial plan should be an impediment to the approval of this draft plan of subdivision, and I'm going to ask you to state that categorically. All the material necessary was supposed to have been prepared by your staff 2 years ago. We filed material. It can't be completed because we don't have draft plan approval. We are in a catch-22. But what you need is done. Second of all, on the EA issue, since the completion and approval of the CDP process, our client has filed all the material necessary for stormwater management approval and has conducted, through you, the statutory public meeting at which this information was made available. It is not available to you, I say with respect. Thank you. To require my client to go through stages 3 and 4 of an EA process, the process has been completed. It was completed at the time of the CDP. Council wanted more work has been done. I'm going to ask you to eliminate the stage 4 and notice of completion of the EA by bringing that to council and eliminate it as an impediment to my client's approval. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Thanks very much. You have raised some questions that may come out when we question staff. Next speaker is Doug Kasda. I'm sure you know the rules now.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
I'll do less.
Okay, thanks.
Good morning. My name is Doug Kasda. I'm the owner of Richmond Home Hardware. I'm here today just to support this development. In terms of engineering, I can't really add anything to that, but I just want to add my perspective as a business owner to show the importance of this development to the community. Richmond needs more residential development than what currently exists to support local businesses. Right now, everybody in the town is, I think they're doing okay, but obviously there's room to do better. Right now, half of our business is done outside of Richmond, and I'd like to change that. The Richmond Plaza, which we are a tenant in, has been run down for years due to the fact that the owner cannot charge enough rent to fix it up, and the tenants don't have enough money to reinvest in their business. The only way to change this is with population growth. I don't think the people in Richmond are not against this development, but I think most people would like more amenities in the town of Richmond, and we have an opportunity to do this with this subdivision. I'm sure that any concerns that have been raised with this subdivision can be solved if they haven't already been. There are some people in the town that are just against development in general in the area, but I feel that view is just unrealistic. We're too close to Ottawa. Like I said, it's just unrealistic. There were probably also some concerns with the Colonnade development, similar to what's going on now, probably not on the same scale. But I know that no one's complaining that there's Tim Hortons there and a brand new independent grocer. So it's good for the community. I just believe this development is good for the community and it's good for small business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate. I don't see any questions, but that is always a major concern in a rural village, is that balance of protecting the community and attracting new residents, because I think all of us in the rural areas agree that the rural villages need that influx of new residents to help businesses and associated community.
Well, I agree, because Richmond, I mean, it's a commuter town, so like most people, if it's not available in Richmond, they're going to go somewhere else. And like I said, if there was more available in Richmond, I think they would shop locally more.
Okay, we appreciate your comment.
Thanks.
The last speaker, Graham Green, Abbey Hill Farms.
Hi, my name's Graham Green. Come before you today with a speech or anything.
You want to just come forward there?
Basically, why I came here today is I'm a resident of Richmond. I have a farm in Richmond. I'm a property owner adjacent to the property that's considered for development. I was part of the steering committee. This goes back to 2008. There's only a handful of people that are in this room today that started when this process started. And I have concerns that I was part of the CDP. We give our volunteer hours every 2 weeks for almost 2 years. And we put lots of time and effort into this. And for people that have come into this process now that didn't start before, I don't think they really understand how much time that has already been put into this process. And I would like to ask you, if we were part of the CDP, which was approved, why did we do it if we're at this point right now? You know, like, there's a handful of people that are trying to hold this development back, and I personally feel that most of this is stall tactics. They're completely stalling, trying to buy time, hoping this development will never happen. As a resident of Richmond, if you wanted to buy a pair of underwear or a pair of socks, what would be the first thing you'd have to do? You'd have to leave Richmond and go buy them someplace else. What some of these people don't understand is, in order to run a business, you have to have people buying stuff from your business. And without people, you got nothing. So when little Johnny, your grandson, wants a job in the community, there has to be places for Johnny to find that job. In order to find those jobs, you have to have businesses there. And I just don't understand why you have a developer here. I know you have to get it right, and we don't want to ruin this village, but you have a developer that's willing to spend probably $1 billion in the next 10 to 15 years in this community, with restaurants, where the construction workers will be eating at, and so on and so on. I don't know why there's so many roadblocks for these developers when they're trying to improve, for the most part, where you live. I can't understand why it's taken so long to get to this point. And why did we ever do the CDP to start with? Like, why did we do it? We did it to make this Union Village better, and we did that process, and now we're taking how many steps backwards here today? I don't understand it. So, like, I'd ask the committee to really think long and hard about this and see through some of the mess about some of the stuff that's been said here today before you. And I think you'll come up, just like the lawyer said a few speakers ago, like, the truth will come out at the OMB. But I don't think we need to go there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very emotional and practical appeal. I know you're a very successful businessman yourself, and appreciate your comments. It comes from the heart. And we will be discussing your comments and others. I don't see any questions. So, Councillor Moffitt.
I just want to respond. I mean, you're asking what was the point of doing the CDP. Like, I don't see this as an undoing of the community design plan. The issues before us aren't necessarily something that were dealt with under the community design plan. I mean, you recall, I think you were there as I was, July 8th, 2010, when Agriculture Rural Affairs Committee approved the CDP with the conditions. The conditions are what we're dealing with. They weren't contemplated, maybe they were contemplated, but they weren't necessarily completely resolved during the CDP process. So committee and council kind of punted those issues to the developer to deal with through the development application, which we're currently doing. We just aren't there yet. I like you, am hopeful that we can do all that before we get to the OMB. I mean, why do we need the province to sort out our own issues? But the point is we still have to sort those out. And right now we have an OMB hearing in front of us that we have to deal with today. But the point is that staff are still committed to working with the developer, and maybe the developer might not be in full agreement with that comment, but I intend to work with staff and the developer over the coming weeks to try to resolve the issues that we have and try to find something for Richmond that works for everyone. I don't think anyone in Richmond, I mean, few and far between are the people that say outright reject this development. We've grown in Richmond quite plentiful in the past several years. You're talking about a community that 60 years ago only had 300 people in it. You're talking about a community that over the past 10 years has grown 10% per year. The growth has come. No one's expecting growth to stop in Richmond. I think no one's asking for growth to stop in Richmond. It's just about how we do it and how it impacts the community, and to make sure that it fits with the community. I think the developer, to an extent, wants to achieve that. I just think we have some more issues that we need to work through in the coming weeks. But to say that the CDP process was useless, I don't think is fair, and I don't think that I would ever say that your contribution to that process or to the community has been lost.
So I'd ask you to deal with this issue if it's not dealt with today in timely fashion. Like, this has gone on since 2008. So it's not like this has just started here today or like a week or a month ago. This started years ago.
Okay. Well, we appreciate your comments. I think you've expressed what many feel about this. I think, as Councillor Moffat has said, we walk a delicate balance between what we want to happen. I think everybody, with the exception maybe of a few, want to happen for the village of Richmond, but also there's that need to protect what city staff feel are perhaps some inadequacies in this. So we appreciate what you've said, and hopefully we'll have a positive outcome.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much. Okay, we now have an opportunity. You've heard the speakers and a wide range of comments. Are there questions that you wish to bring forward to city staff before we get into debate? Okay. Councillor Deputy Mayor Al Shantiri.
Thank you very much. And we heard from the resident, and we've seen the passion of our colleague councillors trying to work his way through this. Now, we know the date, as we heard, is going to be November 26. Is that correct?
That's the date of the pre-hearing, yes.
For pre-hearing. So would it be possible, and I'm not sure if the council will be okay with it, to continue that dialogue between the councillor and the community and the proposal? Will that give us enough time before the pre-hearing, or the pre-hearing has to? I'm not suggesting changing any date, but I'm just suggesting, can we give the councillor more time and staff to work with the proponent?
Mr. Chair, I may refer to a certain extent to Mr. Mark to outline the process and where the pre-hearing falls and where where the ultimate hearing will fall as far as a timeline perspective. Certainly, discussions are happening continuing to happen with the developer and the councillor. I anticipate that as we approach the 26th, frankly speaking, it's in everyone's best interest to try to address as many of the outstanding issues as we can to a point where we're all in agreement. And beyond that 26th date, I think it's still in everybody's best interest beyond that to continue to work to resolve all of the outstanding issues right up until the point of the actual hearing. And I guess I would refer to Mr. Mark to outline sort of a ballpark as to when that ultimate hearing might take place.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. And I was just going to refer the Councillor Deputy Mayor's question to Mr. Mark. So perhaps you would have a comment, Mr. Mark.
Mr. Chair, the date of November the 26th is a pre-hearing, and at that point, the issues for the ultimate hearing will be established, along with a time frame and a procedure for the exchange of documents. the instructions to staff will be based upon this committee's recommendation, as it may or may not be changed by council on the 13th. I'm certain that discussions will continue between the 13th and the 26th, but they can also continue after that date. With the present schedule before the Ontario Municipal Board, at the earliest, a hearing would be in March, and that's being optimistic. My guess is likely will be in May. So that one does not want to wait until that time to have the discussions. There's opportunity to have them throughout the process after today and continuing into the new year.
Thank you, Mr. Mark, and thank you, Councillor Deputy Mayor El-Shantiri. I think that's a good question. I know you like to mediate resolutions, and so perhaps this is possible. Vice Chair, Councillor Blais.
Thanks. Just, Mr. Mark, I wanted, so after the pre-hearing, there are no restrictions on anyone at the city's ability to negotiate with the applicant on achieving a settlement?
There are no restrictions, and discussions often take place if they bring about minor changes. Then at that time it's typically the ward council and the committee chair that are consulted. If they were significant changes, then we'd be back before you for instructions. But the discussions themselves can continue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. Thank you, Vice Chair, Councillor Blais. Are there any other comments or discussions before we move to debate? Any comments? Okay, so you have, I just want to make a comment. I appreciate, and I just made tallies in the speakers we had today. I think it was 3 in support of the staff recommendation and 3 opposed to it, and it seems to be the feeling that the vibes I get from people I have had discussions with, and I appreciate Mr. Cohen being here, and I think he's a very experienced lawyer, and as well we have Mr. Mark and Councillor Moffat, and I'm hopeful if this staff report is carried that those issues can be resolved. I think Richmond is, there's nobody from Greeley here, I guess, so I can say that Greeley is one of the 3 main villages, and I'm very proud of the direction that village is taking, but Richmond certainly is, I think, one of the jewels of the rural villages in the city of Ottawa, and there is a great future for that village, and I drive through it often. I see it, and I know that there is a great desire from not only the residents of the village of Richmond, but in outlying areas to see that grow. So those are the only comments I have on the motion that is before us, and should I read that? Scott. Okay. So on item number 4, I'm just going to read it, that until such time as the outstanding matters relating to stormwater management, subdivision layout, and financial implications of servicing are resolved, that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, number 1, refuse draft approval of the subdivision related to 6335 and 6350 Per Street application, and recommend council refuse the zoning bylaw amendment related to 6335 and 6350 Per Street, and direct staff to oppose the foregoing application at the pending Ontario Municipal Board hearing concerning the appeals to the subdivision application and the zoning bylaw amendment submitted by the applicant. So on this motion, Councillor Deputy Mayor El-Shantiri.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to have a way. I will support that motion, but is it possible to add as a friendly amendment staff to continue negotiate even beyond the date for the pre-hearing and engage the local councillor and the chair of the committee to see if we can find a solution. That should not be the final thing, is just to go to OMB. I think the final direction I would like to see here, continue working on finding a solution and keep the date in places, but we need to somehow direct staff to continue on that dialogue, not just to stop because we're going to OMB.
Thank you. I guess, Mr. Mark, Councillor Deputy Mayor El-Shantiri is suggesting that on the motion that, although I think it's quite evident that this process would happen, that should be included in the motion. I'd just like your comment.
Mr. Chair, as I said, staff would do that anyway, but if the committee is of the view that it should be part of the entire formal package that we have as a committee report, I certainly have no objection to it, Mr. Chair.
I would like to include that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so
just,
would
continue,
you,
just as a friendly amendment, continue, and we heard from our solicitor, they have no objection to it, so just to keep it as a direction, keep our staff in dialogue, working with the local councillor and the chair of the committee, even beyond that date set for the hearing, or beyond the hearing. And Councillor Moffitt, you're okay with that? Okay.
Okay, so we have a friendly amendment by Councillor Deputy Mayor El-Shantiri that it basically is saying that the city will, through the ward councillor and staff and the chair, continue to work with the applicant to resolve the issues, hopefully resolve the issues before the OMB hearing. So with that amended motion, I'll call the item. Is it carried?
Carried.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And now we'll move to thank staff and those who come out to speak today. And it is my sincere hope that we can resolve those issues amicably and send everyone home happy soon. Item we have, I said that we have another item that I wanted to add, and so this is an item that requires the suspension of the rules to consider this, and I think you have copies of that. The request is to suspend the rules of procedure due to the fact that the application for a limited number of spots in the ground-mounted solar fit 3 program will be accepted until December 13, 2013. Council support for application, a fact in favor of individual projects. I'll just, so on the suspension, carried. Councillor Deputy Mayor El-Shantiri, did you want to speak to this?
Well, Mr. Chair, thank you very much, and thanks for on the suspension of the rules. As you know, the FIT program for the solar panel, it comes in with some time restriction, and I believe we do have 3 applications on the front of us. I'll just read the address. This, I believe we have one in concession 6, lot 11, and there's the Pindas in Ward 5. We have another one on Torwood Drive in Ward 5. We have one in Ward 19 and McVeigh Road, and another one, actually we have 2 on the same street. So we have 4 applicants. We need to submit them before, I believe, before December 13th. So that's why we bring it to this committee at this time as a one motion for the 4 applications. So I hope you can support this.
Okay, I think members of the committee have in front of them. I am just going to take a moment to read that. Okay. I think it should be read in. Whereas on November 4th, 2013, the Ontario Power Authority opened the application window for ground-mounted solar green energy projects between 10 and 500 kilowatts under the provincial FIT program. And that same day, the OPA announced the window will close December 13th, 2013. And whereas the City of Ottawa has received several requests for support for individual projects across the rural areas of the city, and the City Council support for individual applications can help projects qualify for the program, and whereas the promotion of compatible green technology aligns with environmental and economic development goals in the 2014 term of council priorities. And whereas the OPA requires individual motions of support for each project, and in order which applications are received by the OPA is a consideration in the approval process, and therefore be resolved, the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve the individual motions of support for the applications of projects for ground-mounted solar FIT 3 program listed in Appendix A through D attached. So thank you, Councillor Deputy Mayor El Shantiri, seconded by Councillor Blais. Absolutely. Councillor Moffat.
Just not really on this motion. Just we've done this a couple times now on different projects. I don't know who to ask or who to direct to, Derek. Can we find out where the other motions, what impact they've had? Like, have those projects been approved because of our motion? And similarly, have any projects been approved without a council motion? It's interesting, the impact of this new point system that the province came up with.
Mr. Chair, I can follow up with the Ontario Power Authority to see if that information is available to the public. Some of that is discussions between them and who they're contracting with, and I'm not certain how much of that information will be publicly available, but it is, I can tell you that there were a large number of projects that weren't approved, that went through the process last year. Anecdotally, solely from speaking from people within the solar industry, my understanding is that there were no ground mount projects approved in Ottawa through the last round.
Okay, that's a good question, Councillor Moffat, and thank you for that, Mr. Moody. So on that motion, is it carried? Thank you again, Councillor Deputy Mayor El Shantiri and Councillor Moffat. And we'll move ahead to, there are no in-camera items for this meeting. No speakers have registered in the open mic session. You can if you wish. Notices of motion, none received in advance. There are no inquiries that have been received, and our next meeting is Thursday, December the 5th at 9:30 a.m. in this room. And with that, we are adjourned. I don't want to tell everybody here because they may...
Sorry? I know, but it's there for a reason. So you're going to do it anyway. Okay.